Let me ask you something most people won't ask directly. Do you feel confident, genuinely, quietly confident in your intimate life? Not performing confidence, not the version of yourself you put on when you think someone expects a certain kind of energy. I mean, the real thing. The kind where you feel present in your own body, clear about what you want, and comfortable enough to actually be there. Not watching yourself from a distance, narrating, editing, managing impressions, but actually there. If that question landed somewhere uncomfortable, stay with me. Because what I've found is that sexual confidence for introverts isn't a personality transplant. It isn't about becoming louder, more spontaneous, more anything. It's about something much quieter and much more specific to how our minds actually work. Here's what the world tells introverts about confidence in this area: be more open, initiate more, stop overthinking, loosen up. And underneath all of it, the implied message is the way you naturally are is an obstacle, something to overcome. And a lot of us have tried. We have pushed ourselves into versions of spontaneity that felt hollow. We have performed an ease we did not feel. We have smiled through experiences where some part of us was still standing slightly outside our own body, observing, assessing, wondering how we were coming across, and then felt vaguely ashamed afterward. Not because anything went wrong, but because we weren't fully there. Here's the part nobody says. The introvert tendency to overthink isn't a flaw in intimacy. It's a misdirected strength. The same mind that makes you a careful thinker, a deep feeler, an attentive partner. That mind, when it turns on itself in an intimate moment, becomes the exact thing that pulls you out of it. The problem isn't that you think too much. The problem is what your thinking is pointed at. I know this because I spent years pointed in the wrong direction. I was in a relationship, a serious one, a good one in many ways, and I noticed a pattern I couldn't quite name. In any kind of intimate context, there was always a part of me that was slightly elsewhere. Taking notes, monitoring, is this right? Is this what they want? Am I being what this moment needs? And because I'm an introvert, because I process internally and rarely say the uncomfortable thing out loud, I never named it. Not to my partner, not really to myself. I just carried it as a low-level hum of disconnection. The relationship ended for other reasons, but in the period afterward, when I finally had the space and the honesty to look at my own patterns clearly, I realized something that unsettled me. I had never, not once, been fully present in a genuinely intimate moment. I had always been performing a version of presence, and the tragedy wasn't that anyone had noticed, it was that nobody had. I was good enough at that performance that it passed, and that meant the distance was mine alone to carry. If you have ever felt like there is a pane of glass between you and your own experience, if you have ever been physically present in a moment and emotionally slightly outside it, then this is exactly for you. Let's understand what's actually happening. The introvert nervous system is, by design, more sensitive to stimulation than the extrovert nervous system. This is not an opinion. It's one of the most replicated findings in personality psychology, going back to Hans Eysenck's work in the 1960s. Introverts have a naturally higher baseline level of cortical arousal, which means the same environment that feels energizing to an extrovert can tip into overwhelming for us. Now apply that to intimacy, an experience that is, by its nature, high stimulation, physical sensation, emotional exposure, uncertainty, vulnerability, impression management, all at once. For an extrovert, that stimulation is mostly signal. For an introvert, some of it becomes noise. And when the mind detects overload, it does what introvert minds do best. It retreats inward. It starts processing. It starts monitoring. It starts to manage the experience rather than inhabit it. This is not a psychological disorder. It's an extremely logical response from a nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do. The issue is that intimacy requires the opposite of management. It requires surrender, not of your values and of your boundaries, but of the part of you that is constantly evaluating how things are going. And nobody teaches introverts how to do that, because every piece of advice assumes that confidence is loud, that presence is extroverted, that if you're quiet in your own skin, something must be wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. You just haven't been given a model that fits how you are actually built. So there I was, after that relationship, sitting with the realization that I had been a visitor in my own intimate life. I started for the first time to get genuinely curious about what I actually wanted. Not what I thought I should want, not what seemed reasonable or appropriate, or what the other person would respond well to. What I, specifically with my specific mind and specific nervous system, actually found connecting, actually found grounding, actually found safe enough to land in. That inquiry took time. It was uncomfortable. But it was also the first time my thinking had ever been useful in that area, because I had finally aimed at the right target. Imagine this: being in an intimate moment and feeling your own weight, present in your own body, not narrating, not monitoring, not managing, just there, with another person, in something that is actually happening to you rather than being observed by you. Knowing what you want clearly enough to say it. Not as a performance of confidence, but because you have done enough internal work that the knowing is just there, quiet, clear, yours. That's not a version of yourself you have to become. It's a version of yourself that you have to stop talking over. It comes down to three things. I call them ground, name, pace. Ground before you arrive. Introverts don't transition well. We carry the previous context into the new one. If you have come straight from a demanding day, a draining conversation, a mentally taxing situation, part of your nervous system is still there. Genuine presence in intimacy requires a transition, not a ritual, not a performance. Just a few minutes of genuine decompression where you return to your own body before you're expected to share it. This might be a short walk, sitting alone in a quiet room. Anything that signals to your nervous system, that's done. This is now. Small practice, significant difference. Name what you actually want, privately first. Introverts process internally before we can express externally. Sexual confidence, real confidence, not performed confidence, requires that you have done enough internal work that your wants are available to you. Not scripted, not rehearsed, just known. This means spending real time, privately, getting honest with yourself about what you actually find connecting, what you actually find grounding, what kind of intimacy restores you rather than depletes you further. Most introverts skip this step because it feels indulgent or unnecessary. It isn't. You cannot express what you haven't first located. Pace the intimacy to your depth, not their timeline. Introverts build genuine intimacy, slowly and non-linearly. We need conversation before touch, understanding before exposure, safety before vulnerability. This is not a deficiency. This is how depth actually works. The right partner will understand that your slowness is not disinterest. It is the same carefulness that will make you, eventually, the most present person they have ever been with. Don't compress your timeline to match an energy that isn't yours. The intimacy you build at your own pace is the only kind that won't require a performance to sustain. About a year after that realization, after I stopped trying to perform a version of ease and started building a real one, something shifted that I didn't expect. It wasn't that I became more confident in the way the word usually means. I didn't become bolder or louder or more initiating. I became more specific. I knew what I wanted. I knew what I needed to feel safe. I knew the difference between an intimate experience that restored me and one that quietly hollowed me out, even when both looked the same from the outside. And that specificity, that quiet internal clarity, turned out to be the most attractive thing I had ever brought into a relationship. Not because it performed well, because it was real. The person I'm with now has said something to me I'd never heard before. She said, "You're actually with me." Not exciting, not impressive. Here. I didn't know until someone named it how long I had been absent. So here's your challenge. This week, ask yourself one question and sit with it honestly. In intimate moments, where does my mind usually go? Not judgmentally, just as data. What is your thinking pointed at? Yourself? The other person? How it's going? What comes next? Or baseball? That answer tells you exactly where the work is. And if you are someone who has spent years feeling slightly outside your own intimate life, performing ease, performing presence, performing a confidence you didn't quite feel, I want you to hear this clearly. You're not too much in your head. You have simply never been given permission to use your head in a way that actually serves you. Your depth, your carefulness, your capacity for internal richness, these are not obstacles to intimacy. In the right conditions, with the right person, at your own pace, they are the whole point.